Hey, folks, Zach Osterman here, IU Insider, Indianapolis Star. This is Mind Your Banners for Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. He is Mike Niziolek. Again, as I said, I'm Zach Osterman. I'm trying to retweet this while we're talking here, Mike, because we got started a little bit late because I had some very real and present technical issues, but we are going now, and we are talking about Indiana against Illinois. I think it's fair to say, and I want to discuss the stakes conversation that you and I got into on Saturday, but I think it is fair at least to say this is probably as anticipated of a game for Indiana as I think any that we've seen in about 5 years. Like Iowa in 2021 had this feel to it, and obviously that was week one, but the whole point was it was following a really good season. Of course, fans could not witness that season in person, the vast majority of them. But it was that same sort of feel of you were able to circle that first Big Ten game on your schedule and say, here is a good test of, we think we got a good team. Let's see how much our excitement is borne out. Is that fair in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, this gets to what we've been talking about kind of back and forth. I think we're on different sides of the table. I still think that Michigan game was, in terms of, I know you have a longer historical context, but just that I felt that there was more anticipation and excitement for that game. I think the calendar has something to do with this. I think, I've talked about kind of the opponent, because I think, Indiana has had recent success against Illinois. They're 4-1, going back to I think 2012 or something like that. Won multiple games at Memorial Stadium. I think it's anticipated, but I just think based on the time in the calendar, Illinois could go on. I'm not going to say that it's likely or, even they could lose 5 games. And so the game loses its luster. I think you're so early in the season where if you're not a traditional sort of top tier program, like there's cachet to beating Ohio State at any time. I think there's cachet to beating Michigan anytime, even in down here. But I don't know that that's the same for Illinois. And I think it's a significant moment, and there's no downplaying it, but they've got even bigger games on the calendar. I mean, coming up in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I guess, because there's a bye in there. So, with the way the schedule stacks up, it sort of ramps up. I feel like they win this one. I feel like the Iowa game is going to be, just as big at Iowa, 4-0, and then that game at Oregon would be even bigger at 5-0. So I just feel like it's an on-ramp to making the season what it was last year, because I think when you got to 10-0, you realized, man, this is not that doesn't happen very often. Obviously 1967 was last time. So I just think it kind of built.
They've never been 10-0, just to be clear.
Yeah, well, an undefeated streak like that. Similar. What was it? 8, 7, something?
Yeah, I think it was 8.
Yeah.
I think, well, I listen, I would say 2 things. Number one, I think that we do, and I know this is, Aaron Ferguson is moderating a roundtable we're putting together behind the scenes. It's going to run later in the week. And this is one of the points I raised in that roundtable is, I think number one, we are having to kind of reframe what some of these games mean more nationally, because we've expanded playoff access. And, the idea, for example, that Illinois, if we live even in a 14 playoff world, a program like Illinois is punching up from the beginning because of its perceived status, right? Like even in the playoff era, when the playoff was so small, there was this feeling that the biggest brands still probably had the biggest leg up. What we saw last year in the 12-team playoff was Indiana gets an at-large bid. SMU gets an at-large bid. They get those at the expense of SEC teams, and I'm not trying to rehash that debate, but my point is we've reframed kind of this idea that not only could, for example, Illinois afford to lose this game just from a wins and losses perspective and still make the playoff, but also that a game between Indiana and Illinois can carry, even in September, these kinds of postseason implications in this kind of weight, because we've expanded the playoff, and because not only have we expanded access from a brand perspective, we've also expanded access from a competitive perspective. You can lose a couple of games and still get there. And so I think we need to maybe see more games like this just in general as, playoff adjacent, playoff impactful games, because the playoffs just open to more teams. That means more games matter. I think for Indiana specifically, I understand your point about beating Michigan. I'm not disputing that. I don't really think that much of the recent success against Illinois comes into it. I know the Illinois side of this sees it as a little bit of a rivalry. Indiana fans do not, and they never really have, and I suspect they never really will. I think there are times when the sort of regionality of Indiana, Illinois in a few different sports, basketball being the most prominent example, has lent itself to a little bit more bad blood than the average, but Indiana does not, and I don't think ever will see Illinois as a rival, and so I don't think like recent results matter.
Well, my point is like
I think I think what matters for Indiana fans is they have not had a moment like this at home. They're in prime time. They're hosting a top 10 team. This is the first top 20 matchup. Both teams ranked in the top 20 since 1987 at Memorial Stadium. Indiana's not beaten a top 10 team of any description at home since 1967, the Purdue game in 67 that got them to the Rose Bowl. Indiana just doesn't get moments like this, and they've beaten Michigan before. They beat Penn State when they were down in the Bill O'Brien era because of everything that fell out with the sanctions and the way that program kind of was I think justifiably punished. But this opportunity to be sold out, both teams ranked in prime time, it is the game of its time slot Saturday night. There's not another game that compares to it Saturday night in terms of ranked versus ranked, playoff versus playoffs, primarily because South Carolina lost, but still that's the point. Indiana has not gotten moments like this, and I just think it is a different world compared to something like Michigan, which I think is a very important symbolic victory. But that
Michigan game locked them into the playoff. How is that symbolic?
Okay, all right, Jiminy Glick, calm down.
What are you talking about? Like, I mean, it was symbolic. If they lost that, they're done. If they won it, and I pointed this out when we're doing a story about this, it was a 90% chance of making the field. Like, they're not going to have a 90% chance of making the field if they win against Illinois. And their chances of not making the field will not go down as much if they lose that game. Because, I mean, obviously less likely that you see them if they lose that. They beat Oregon and Penn State on the road. But I'm just saying the percentage-wise, and the computers will see that they have those games on the schedule and they could win those back. My point about Illinois wasn't that they're a rival. It's that when you've seen a team, your team, like, one win against Michigan is since 87 before 2020 or something like that, and then they had a 24-game losing streak there.
I don't think they'd beaten Michigan since the 80s when they beat them in COVID.
I think
they haven't won in Ann Arbor. Like
and so I'm saying that they've had success, Illinois. So just the idea that yes, they're ranked that high, but that it's not as meaningful of an opponent because you've probably one of the few Big Tens you've had a winning record with during that stretch. And it's not, like you said, not a rival, which I agree. And so I'm saying that there's less juice to the idea of beating Illinois, a top 10 Illinois, than other teams, like I use as an example of Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, I think would be up there, Penn State, obviously. So that's just my point. I'm not saying it's not significant or it's not important or it's not a big moment. I just think to say it outshines last year's game against Michigan or say it was bigger because I think because it had the 3:30 slot. So, I mean, like, and that's the slot, for the Big Ten. So I just think if you're putting it into context, I thought that's a bigger game than the one Saturday. I'm not saying this isn't a big game. I'm just saying we don't have to go far back. And now you've frozen. Commenters, am I frozen or is he frozen? He's frozen. All right. Well, I'm texting him now to let him know. Maybe he doesn't know. The time to fill us. But this would be a good time to weigh in. I'm curious. I mean, Indiana fans, I think from a Nationals perspective, one point that I made is that if this was a clear cut, I know there's some politics involved, but if this was the biggest game by far of the week, or the way Zach's framing it, game day, and Big Noon Kickoff would be on campus. They are not. They are going to some, I think, lesser games. I did leave him speechless, Jamie. Thank you. He just didn't have an argument to counter. He lost so bad, his computer just shut down. But I know there's a lot that goes into those decisions, but I think they wouldn't avoid a game that was obviously the top game of the week if they thought it was, for two lesser than games. His internet has cut out. He should be coming back soon, hopefully. So I saw somebody, we can touch on a couple other topics here, kind of break down the news of the week. Signetti talked on Monday. I think it was Terry Davis mentioned about Lee Beebe Jr. He indeed is out for the season. A non-contact knee injury shortens kind of the running back rotation for now, but Signetti said Kobe Martin, the redshirt freshman out of Fishers, will probably kind of step up into that spot. He likes kind of using three backs. He likes using three backs. That he's done that going back to his time at Elon. And so, that's something to really watch. Martin looked really sharp, I thought, in the kind of quarter plus he played, had his first career 100-yard game. And has flashed. He's a really athletic guy, and the coaches like him. But BB, man, he was living up to the profile he had at UAB, where he broke a lot of tackles and was really good with yards after contact. And so he's a guy that I think you're going to miss a little bit, even though I think Roman Hemby is certainly capable of upping his, carries per game and things like that. And so it'll be interesting to see how that running back rotation looks, because this is the first time in I think 3 decades that they've rushed for. Oh, there he is, for 300 plus yards in three straight games. So it's something to watch here as we kind of go forward with the running backs. I was just kind of covering kind of the news from the press conference. Somebody mentioned about BB. He's out, obviously, and what they're going to do with that rotation. But now that you're back, I won the argument, I guess, because you just left and quit.
Because the last comment I saw said, "Good point, Zach." And so, true statement, Zach. And unfortunately, that was the end of the argument because my internet kicked me out of the podcast. Probably you did it because you realized you were losing the argument. So,
no, everybody here said, "Man, you roasted him and he quit."
It's weird. I'm not seeing any of this. I'm not seeing any of this discussion in the chat. All right, so we were talking about.
And now you're wearing headphones. What's going on?
I was wearing headphones before. I have to have headphones plugged into the microphone for the microphone to work properly. We're talking about the run game. You probably covered some of this as well. I mean, the thing that strikes me, and listen, I thought BB looked like a really interesting player through the first 2+ weeks, showed a little bit of a nice combination of burst and shiftiness. But Indiana may do it too last year. And then you come in, or you see Kobe Martin rather come in on Friday. And I understand the competition is what it is, but if all you're asking him to do is be your third back, I thought that was a really encouraging. If all you're asking Kobe Martin to do is be last year's Kalon Black, then I thought that was a perfectly encouraging sort of performance. And, listen, you probably can't afford to lose another one, but you also get to a point when you talk about injuries where it's like, well, of course you can't, right? You get to a point where you're talking about injuries.
3 players at the same position, nobody's going to have.
There's no remedy for that. There's no solution for that. Sometimes you just have that bad luck. So I think it hurts for Indiana, but as you said on Saturday, there are places that Indiana can afford to a little bit more sort of impact on their depth, and I think that is one of them.
Yeah, what I was saying about BB is that he was living up to what his kind of profile, when you kind of looked at some of the analytics just from Pro Football Focus about forced missed tackles, yards after contact. He really was hard to bring down, and was kind of showing that. And so they will miss that. One thing I think I wrote in the story was that Hemby, when he was, I think it was his first year that he was kind of in as that starter, was 2000, maybe it was 3 or 22. He averaged 17 carries a game kind of in the back half of the season. So he's capable too of sort of, carrying a heavier load. And I think being effective late in the game. He's not a guy that I think you're going to wear down. And
that's where you wonder if Kobe Martin doesn't come into play a little bit more, is if Kobe Martin picks up 5 carries in the first 2 quarters that Roman Hemby doesn't have to, then suddenly you have that explosive player in the fourth quarter, right? Like that.
Yeah, I'm saying that they can mix and match. Like it depends on the
Yeah.
game. They don't have to go away from Hemby and Black, I don't think, because I think they're both capable of splitting up, 35 carries a game. But like you said, they will. I think now that they have enough confidence, or at least they've said they have enough confidence for Martin to sort of step in, get a first down carry here and there to sort of like lighten the workload and keep those guys fresh. Because like I said, Cignetti, that's what he prefers to do, and that's kind of how he's always done it. Man, just no sound now. And just what is going on? Can't hear him. Is he talking to himself? We cannot hear you. This is just. Can you fail a podcast? This is what is going on?
That was a mess. Talking about Illinois, I mean, it's interesting. Like there are a couple numbers that jumped out at me, and that's they have the second most sacks in the conference, tied for the second most sacks in the conference through 3 games. They are last in the conference though through 3 games in sacks allowed, and they are second to last in tackles for loss allowed. And I think listen, I understand the competitive level is a lot different, right? That what Indiana, the step up Indiana is going to have to take is one that, at least to a certain extent, although, Duke goes on the road and loses to Tulane too. I think Tulane's a really good team, but, we're maybe not going to look at that Duke game as being quite as difficult for Illinois long-term. We'll see. But man, if I was Brett Bielema, I would not want to have an offensive front that's struggling to keep a defense out of my backfield and be opening Big Ten play with a team that has 30 tackles for loss in its last 2 games. I don't think he would care if those tackles for loss were against who they were against. I think that number would concern him, frankly.
Well, yeah, that Duke game was weird. Like, I mean, Duke turned it over, I think, 5 times, and they allowed like a lot of passing yards. They allowed they had a lot of 300-yard passing games.
So it was a close game for a long time. And Duke, I'm not taking anything away from Illinois, but Duke really just took itself
gave a lot
out.
away. Yeah. But I mean, if you're watching that game, you're thinking, man, there are some openings. I mean, if they're allowing a 300-yard pass, I mean, they did much better against Western Michigan, but a 2-quarterback system and not great. But
tell us more about what you think about the structure.
The 2-quarterback system is just. It's going to work one of these days.
Who do you think? Who might be running the offense at Western Michigan?
A mustache, apparently. No. They've done a lot of good things. Like, I mean, Illinois' defense has 50 quarterback pressures through 3 games, and that's a huge number. So they can create havoc, but they're there's been signs there that I think Indiana can certainly exploit.
It's also striking to me how this was the other thing kind of grabbed my eye. Like, have you seen Fernando Mendoza's numbers next to Luke Altmaier's numbers?
I did not look at.
It's like okay, so I'm gonna give them to you now. Altmaier's attempted 78 passes, Mendoza's attempted 76. Altmaier's completed 56, Mendoza's completed 55. Altmaier has 709 passing yards, Mendoza has 708. Altmaier averages 9.1 yards per attempt with 8 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Mendoza averages 9.3 yards per attempt with 9 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Mendoza has a slightly higher quarterback rating, presumably because Mendoza has a ever so slightly higher completion percentage. Point is, like, these 2 guys look statistically like mirror images of one another. Altmaier knows the league better, of course. And I think, if you're Brett Bielema, you probably therefore feel a little bit more comfortable. Like, I don't know if any coach ever feels fully comfortable, but I think Bielema at least feels like he knows what the baseline he's going to get from Altmaier is on Saturday, whereas Curt Cignetti might still have a little bit of those questions where he says, well, I've seen him for 3 games and I saw him on tape at Cal, but I just need to know, especially as you talk about against a defense that can generate a lot of pressure, how he's going to handle it. This does feel like a game that may stay low scoring for a while, and this does feel like a game that is going to be defined by which quarterback deals with that pressure better. Is that fair in your mind?
Yeah, and I mean, just it is his Mendoza's Big Ten debut, and he said he got a little in the opener. He said part of the problem was that he got kind of amped up, and just kind of got lackadaisical in the pocket, wasn't making his progressions right. So, does he let the emotions get the best of him even for a half, and that can set you back? Being ready for the moment is a big deal. And you mentioned Altmaier; he's got, experience. Obviously a much longer body of work. What is he? Is he a sixth year senior or fifth year senior?
I can't remember, but either way,
He's at Ole Miss for 2 years, and
I think he started in Illinois for 3 years now. This is his third year as a starter.
Maybe the 5 year, but he was at Ole Miss for 2 years. So I mean, the body of work is there, and you're not going to throw anything at him that he hasn't seen. Whereas Mendoza, still, this is kind of his third year starting ish, but like not 2 full years yet. So there is that part of it. And like you said, it'll be interesting to see how he kind of handles the emotion of the moment, especially in that first quarter, or if something goes wrong, because one of the things, somebody mentioned about Rourke and kind of their differences in the comments, Signetti's big thing that he always said about Rourke was like, I knew I was going to run a 2-minute offense because I've seen it on tape, a bunch of times. I knew how he was going to do this because I saw it on tape a bunch of times. Where I don't think have that breadth of work with Mendoza. So you're going to see some of that here because the first playing in a Big Ten a game.
Somebody asked really quickly, and I just want to answer this. Terry Davis said, wonder if ODU beating Virginia Tech help our strength of schedule rating. I'm looking specifically at some of ESPN's numbers and just kind of like where ESPN stacks some of this up. I think the problem you have right now in that regard is that in the FPI, Virginia Tech is 73rd. Like it's less about Old Dominion. I think there's a world like Old Dominion right now is 56th, strength of record 33. Strength of schedule is obviously going to go down, but it's in the top 25 right now nationally. I know why people are asking. That's again another one of these things where, like, 5 years ago we would have said, "Don't worry about it. Just get to November and see if you're still in the hunt." I understand why people are asking now because there is more. There's a wider path to the playoff, and we want to talk about these things more the way we do with basketball. I think really the answer to that question is going to lie with what Old Dominion does from here, because I think it's reasonable to look at Old Dominion, the results that they've gotten so far this season, and believe that they could, they're on a bye this week, but believe that they could have a nice season in the Sun Belt, and that it's not like a signature win, but it doesn't hurt you. It's not dragging you down. But right now, the problem is less Old Dominion and more the fact that, like, Virginia Tech is just terrible. And so if Old Dominion's not going to get credit for that win, then Indiana's not going to get credit for beating Old Dominion either. So I think it's just the jury is kind of firmly out on that one. Somebody points out here, Mendoza played Miami last year. I think he can handle the pressure of the game. I do think, and I know what you said about Signetti and some of what he felt like he knew about Curtis Rourke even before Rourke really proved it in an IU uniform. I would be fascinated to know what he feels like Mendoza proved. Essentially, like what he saw in Mendoza as Cal's starting quarterback, because that is still a substantial. I mean, Mendoza was seeing a higher caliber of athlete, a higher caliber of defense week on week than what Rourke would have been seeing at Ohio. And so there is also a possibility. And I thought, listen, Indiana State is what it is. Indiana State was the first time where I saw Mendoza making some throws, both in terms of confidence and in terms of ball placement, that I just thought that's next level. That number one, like
those were throws that got him into trouble. So
but some of them were also throws. Like if we talk about some of the throws that got Omar Cooper loose, Cooper did the catch and run, but a lot of quarterbacks wouldn't have thrown the ball.
Like that, Signetti didn't want him to make those throws. Like that, he put his receivers in bad spots. So it's interesting. But Signetti was not throwing flowers Mendoza's way after that game either.
Coaches don't always, though. Coaches don't always feel.
He turned a timeout to yell at him, and
that hardly makes Fernando Mendoza distinct.
No, but the idea that I think that he's not. Like I still think Signetti feels like he has not hit his stride yet in this offense.
That's probably true, and he probably hasn't. My point was that Friday night was the first time even allowing for the competition, that I saw him recognizing some windows most quarterbacks wouldn't see and being able to deliver the ball into windows a lot of quarterbacks would not try. And to your point, Cignetti might say, well, some of those windows are going to close on you in Big Ten play.
Right.
But some of them aren't. And let's also be fair. Cignetti was saying that in the immediate wake of the game. So, like, Cignetti himself has not sat down to look at ball placement versus defensive positioning and all those things yet. I agree with you that Cignetti feels like he hasn't seen, the best of Fernando Mendoza in this offense yet. I don't know. There were moments Friday night that reminded that the last time I felt that watching an IU quarterback was genuinely Michael Penix, where I just thought, like, he's seeing certain things and he's making certain throws a lot of guys wouldn't try.
Yeah, but that's not. But I don't think that's necessarily always a good thing, and that's kind of the point, right? Like, you've got to make the right decisions. So Cignetti would rather have a right decision than a great-looking throw.
Well, Michael Penix is the starting quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons.
I mean, there's been a lot of players that have come and gone that have had that moniker recently that did not go well for us. So I don't know if that's the end all be all.
What's the meme from?
How many quarterbacks have they had since Matt Ryan now?
Ooh, 4?
Just 4?
Well, yeah, because there was 1 year of Mariota, and then Desmond Ritter,
Gosh.
and then
this is a good list. Good list to be on.
Ooh, that was the sound that a friend of mine may have made when he was asked a question about his fake ID that he didn't know the answer to. Ooh. All right. The other, I don't know, like, it was kind of hard for me to look past the quarterback battle and just how, like, disruptive these two defensive fronts are. Are there other things that jumped out for you? Because, like, at the end of the day, if you've got really good quarterback play and really good disruption on the defensive front, like, those are kind of things that can decide football games all by themselves, right? Like, what else jumps out to you, I guess?
Like I said, I've just thought their secondary has experience. They got Miles Scott at safety, who's a former receiver turned safety who played really well last year. And then they've got one of the best kind of corners, kind of a slot, can be playing the slot too. Xavier Scott, he was first team All Big Ten last year. And when you talk about guys that they haven't kind of faced yet, if you're talking kind of framing it in that quarterback battle, like, those are a type of caliber player in the secondary that IU has yet to play, because I don't even think when you looked at ODU, it was more their sort of linebacker group that was sort of the driver of that defense. That's where I would look. And like you said, with Mendoza being able to make a lot of throws, does he get burned trying to kind of squeeze one in there that he shouldn't have? It'll be interesting. I think that's a battle. And like you said, he hasn't been pressured a lot. Like, when you kind of look at the pressure numbers, Altmaier's been pressured on like 28 dropbacks, and Mendoza's only been pressured on 19. If Illinois is bringing consistently more pressure, what does that look like? Because I don't think we have a big sort of sample range of what Mendoza will do under pressure when blitzed, and sort of, we know he's got those legs, but can he use them properly and get the ball out still? Does it just end up being runs? Because one of the things he talked about, I don't know if it was after the Kennesaw State game or the opener, was that he ran too much, that he was too willing to sort of pull it down. So how does that all look? Because it's just a different level of defense that they're facing.
Hoop has said this. A couple other people have brought up Illinois. I'm not sure if Illinois has proven it can't stop the run. I mean, the most yards per carry it's allowed to single game this season is 3.42. It's only allowed one team to rush for more than 100 yards all year. I mean, I like to Mike's point, I think Duke, at least my impression was, Duke was hitting Illinois with a lot more through the air. And, like, I mean, Illinois' pass defense is fine. It's 193.7 yards per game. This early in the season, that's not a very good number. And to your point, Duke threw for 356 on only 39 attempts. Like, they didn't throw for 356 on, like, a gaudy number of attempts. That was 9.1 yards per throw.
Yeah.
Now they only get 2 touchdowns, and again, we talk about some of the turnovers. I think Duke also had some real red zone struggles in that game. But it is, I mean, what the numbers tell us and what the performances so far have told us, even allowing for what you said about their secondary, what we both pointed out about their defensive front is you can throw the ball against this team. Like a good quarterback, and Duke has a good quarterback in Darian Mensah. A good quarterback can throw the ball on this team at a level that I don't know anyone's proven they can run it. Now, the flip side is, I think we can probably argue pretty comfortably, Illinois has not seen either an offensive front like this or a rushing attack like this. And I think it's clear that Indiana has added some layers to what it's able to do running the football. I know, people who've listened to this podcast will know I've made a big deal about the long rushing plays this season. Indiana leads the Big Ten in 10 plus yards, 10 plus rushing yard plays of 10 plus rushing yards. That's what I'm trying to say. And Indiana is the only team in the conference with 10 rushes of 20 yards or more. Illinois has had some trouble, not like a tremendous amount of trouble, but Illinois has had some trouble with explosive plays, with long scrimmage plays, but I think a lot more of that has been through the air. And Hoop says my opinion is based on our rushing game, and I think that's perfectly fair because, again, we have these conversations from an Indiana-centric perspective, right? Like we have these conversations saying, what is Indiana doing wrong? What is Indiana, how can Indiana get better? Where are the holes in Indiana? Because we pour over Indiana from 10 feet away, and we only look at the opponent from 10,000 feet a lot of the time. But a lot of these conversations can be had in the other direction. If this is the Illinois version of Mind Your Banners. I don't know what that is. Mind Your, Spaceship Assembly Hall. I'm not sure. They are having conversations like this has been one of the most disruptive pass rushes across the last season and a half in the Big Ten, and we're struggling to keep Luke Altmaier's pocket clean. We haven't seen an offensive. Yes, we have some good numbers, but we haven't seen an offensive line like this. We haven't seen a ground game like this. We haven't seen receivers like this. So, it goes back in the other direction too, and that's what I think makes this game fascinating, and that's why I think it is a game for prime time. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about this, but I'm almost certain NBC traded to get this game in prime time.
And now his internet's going out again.
They gave something up somewhere else.
We need to mind your band. There's technical assistance. Back to your point, but
this is yeah.
The discussion about the run game is interesting. It's something that I think that it's harder to judge based on the opponents, just because, especially the last two, because Indiana had such an athleticism advantage that they were just running by people, and you're just not going to be able to do that in the Big Ten. Like Omar Cooper too, the idea, like his numbers were so inflated. Like if you look at kind of what he's done against FCS teams, it's sort of ridiculous. Like he's obviously the best player on the field in those moments. And so it's hard to judge. I think it'll be an interesting, like if IU's run game is what it's been the last three games, and they're just going to be a very dangerous team. But I do think that it comes back down to earth a little bit, just because I don't think, look, they're athletic. The offensive line is very good. Could they average over 4 yards a carry and be a team that can rely on the run game? Yes. Will they be a team that just gets chunk plays every 5 or 6 carries? I have a hard time seeing that just against Big Ten teams. I do. And so I think that's why I'm sort of a little leery of this. I think it's going to come down to the quarterbacks, just because, and we haven't seen, I think, Indiana's full playbook either. Like, I think we're going to see a lot more stuff on Saturday than we saw when they were just, trying to get through these games healthy and simply and straightforward, post routes and things like that, crossing routes. Like, you're going to see, some more stuff. And I think that's kind of, I just feel like probably whoever plays better at quarterback is going to win the game.
I would agree with that. And I also just generally like to not sort of like a counterpoint to what you said, but more sort of like, if the opposite is true, if the run game is going to be something approximately,
exactly.
Then that again feeds into something you said earlier, which is, I think, the idea that the schedule ramps up nicely. Like, this is a really good first look at what, like, we won't, we did a UCLA last year for Indiana's first Big Ten game, and that was an important win, I think, symbolically for Indiana, but history told us that Indiana was just a much better team than UCLA, and certainly that has come to pass. Now a year later, I think Illinois stands up all season. How tall it stands up, I don't know, but it stands up all season. And the specific ways that I think Illinois is going to wind up testing Indiana, testing the quarterback, testing the run game, testing a pass defense that has still had some moments, I think all gives us a really good window into just how good this team potentially is. And then that feeds nicely into next week at Iowa, particularly if you win. If you lose, it's a different conversation. But if you win, it's like, okay, so now you got to go for the first of your 3 big road tests, probably the easiest, but still going to be difficult, and then so on. I just think this is kind of an ideal, from a neutral perspective, from a sort of, hey, we are trying to we are trying to get an idea of what this team is this year, what it's capable of, how high its ceiling is. I think Illinois is a comfortably good sort of first test right out of the gate. Hoop also asks, and then I want to give you the last word because I got to get off to get on a call. He said Cooper is playing the slot, correct? And the answer to that is yes. He says Sig has done a great job getting him comfy in that new spot. They're undeniably using it differently. You know, they're using Cooper differently. I think they're using him in more intermediate and deep routes. I think that's to his strength, as we saw last weekend. But yes, he is playing out of the slot this season. Any last word? Do you want to do predictions? Do we just stand by the predictions that we made? I think I had 31-20 in the preseason Indiana. Do we stand by the predictions we made then?
Yeah, because I mean, nothing has changed from the first 3 weeks based on either side. I'm pulling mine up. I think I had Indiana 34, Illinois 17 is what I had. So,
okay. So I had a little closer, but we both had Indiana with a 2-score win, or a multi-score win, I guess would be the way to put it.
Yeah, no, nothing's changed from what I saw based on those first 3 weeks that made me kind of change my feeling of what the game looks like.
We could make this a trophy game. We could make it the Beef House Bowl. I mean, I think the Beef House is a little overrated, but we could make it the Beef House Bowl. Have you ever been to Beef
contribution?
Have you ever been to the Beef House?
No.
Okay. Maybe we'll go. They play Illinois in February. Maybe we'll stop on the way. I don't know. Probably not. Might not even be open that early in the day. My guess is that it's going to be a 1:00 Eastern.
Is that breaking news on that scheduling news?
It's just a guess. Although I do think we'll see the basketball schedule sooner rather than later. Alex Graham wants you to go to the Beef House. It's a $25 steak. That's pretty much the way I would describe the Beef House. He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. Indiana, Illinois. Saturday night under the lights. We will be back for a bleary-eyed post-game podcast, provided I can find reliable wireless internet. But until then, this has been Mind Your Banners. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you soon.